Good morning, everyone. Kris here with Inspired Energy. Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
So, this morning's subject is the Ring of Seeking. And what can you tell us about the focus for this week on this ring? Which gates will we be looking at?
Well, we'll be looking, there's six of them all together in the Ring of Seeking. And I invite you to kind of think, what does it mean to seek? Just let that play in your mind as we go through the six. We won't do all six today. Today we're looking at 52 and 39 and 15. And the other three to look forward to are 53, 54, and 58. All Most of them, five of the six, are all in the root center. They're all about pressure. So, starting with the 52, all of these relate to the amino acid serine, and the 52 specifically relates to the perineum. And this is the journey from stress to stillness via the way of restraint. Stress, as we can all, it's easy to say, okay, yeah, I can see stress as a collective shadow. One of the 64 shadows, of course. But stress is, it's environmental, in some ways. So what Richard Rudd, oh my God, sorry, my cat is making me laugh in a random way. I'm not sure why that, anyway. So think of stress as not personal, but arises as a form, a collective energy that cloaks us through the environment. Think of Maya, the veil of illusion that sits on top of humanity. And, it really keeps us in a low vibration, and it feeds into mental anxiety. You could say that the stress that is endemic to life is what jumpstarts or feeds into the mental process, period. And it's important to understand that this fight or flight kind of energy, which stress keeps us in, is in a sense pointing to our inability to not react to fear. And it creates this low level stress that can manifest in two ways. Either you get stuck, or you become very, you can't sit still because you're trying to relieve the pressure by doing. If you're, the only way out of the trap is if you're in the stuckness, the inward turning aspect of the shadow, then one of the only ways to get out of that is service, being of service to others. So now we see that at the gift frequency of restraint, the only way to get to that energy is, in a sense, to escape our fear. And then we become aware of and wanting to participate in the maintenance of a good, you could say, the maintenance of ecology, the maintenance of our environment, and to be responsive and to the natural unfolding of life. So, the seed of a dandelion and the seed of a pine tree, might be a very similar size as a seed, but, what did I just use as an example? Sunflower?
No, a pine cone and something else, but it wasn't a sunflower.
Wow. Where's my mind? So the seeds might be similar sizes, but one has a much different life trajectory. One grows very fast and reaches its fullness quickly, and the other one can live for thousands of years. So embodied within each seed is its own patterning, and restraint is about honoring that patient unfolding process. And it becomes very relevant in parenting because it's all about where is that balance between setting healthy boundaries for your child, pushing them, helping them, you know, being concerned about, I don't know, developmental benchmarks, and trust in life, trust in the force of life as it moves through your kid. So restraint is all about respecting a process. When you're outside of the fear, then the gift, the genius of the restraint is about respect of that timing. And at the highest level, stillness, this is it's very Buddhist-ish. This is about realizing that if frequency at the end of the frequency spectrum, at the low end, you could almost say, at the very, very low end frequency, it almost disappears into nothingness. And at the highest level, the waves and the frequency become so close together that in a sense you could say it disappears in a different way. And so at the center of creation is this foundational stillness, which is still extraordinarily dynamic. If you know anything about toruses, I know very little, Torus, that rotating, twisting figure. It's like has a black hole at one end and the white hole at the other. And there's this energy dynamo that constantly hums at the center of creation. That's the image that Richard provides for us around that. Mm-hmm. Where all the emotional wave of the world stills and everything becomes one. Now, some of his essays profoundly excite me and move me. This one was harder to feel my way into. Do you have any comments about it, Kris? Because I know this is an important one for you.
Oh, you mean my core wound?
Yes.
So, well, I mean, if I look at it from the standpoint of being still and that being the city, and looking at my life from the time I was a child till now, there was no way when I was a child you would ever get me to sit still. And always needing to release some sort of energy, fidgeting, shifting in my chair. I still do it quite a bit, but I can, on occasion, be still. But within me, I can feel that urge to move. And I don't know if it's just the 52 or if it is that I have so many motor centers that I just want to go. Right. So,
or if it's your response to the fear in you, because we talked about you will go into that stuck place or that I can't sit still place, so, but you also have a lot of, interestingly, you have 4 of these 6 that we're going to be exploring, so This is a very important ring for you.
Yeah, it's not really I don't believe it to be fear, because even when I'm relaxed, it's just, this thing, like I should be doing something. Like there needs to be something to do. Like I'm always looking for something to do.
Right.
So I don't think that's necessarily fear. I think that's why I said I think it's related to the fact that I have so many motors, that it makes it hard to unwind. And then trying to realize that because I'm a generator as well, that I have to tire those motors out. So physically, not just mentally. So I can be mentally exhausted, but I haven't done anything physically. So then when I try to rest or whatever, I don't rest. So I notice those kinds of things.
Right. Well, that makes sense. And I mean, I think, I like the way that you reflect on what this could be in yourself. Because even when we come across the gene keys, which is actually an invitation into contemplation, it takes us a while to move through the layers and discover what is true and right for us.
Mhm.
Or, from the human design perspective, it's like we have this information and yet we have to contextualize it because each of us has a unique design. So I
Well,
like the way you modeled for that a kind of a bit of a contemplative process, like how does this fit?
yeah, it's also that because you have certain programs running in you from your childhood, which have been imprinted upon you or, given to you through, schooling or your parents or whatever,
Hmm.
um, that also can affect it. So, I look at things like, for example, never wanting to be late. Well, that is could be my motors, but it's also because my mother was always like that and always rushing us and always hurrying us. And so, I mean, it's like you said, it's in layers and you have to, unravel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that comes back to really learning how to tune into your own organism through following your strategy and inner authority.
Hmm.
Um, where'd my face go? Hmm.
Well, I don't know. It's on my screen. So, so,
Well, it disappeared on mine like there was a black hole there for a second.
well, maybe that was the void that you were speaking about or the Taurus. So let's move on and you tell us about 39.
Yeah, yeah. Um, 39 is a very interesting one. I find it quite fascinating. Here we have the adrenals themselves. It's another root center gate. It points towards the solar plexus. This is a journey from provocation to liberation via the way of dynamism. And this is a very compelling energy for all of us. It looms large in sort of our collective imagination because 39, along with 38, represents the warrior energy, in human life. The mystique of the warrior and our fascination with it uh, is centered here and in the 38. Now, at the heart of it, at the heart of the shadow of provocation is the issue of violence in the world. With 39, there's a fear of being trapped, of having your freedom taken away. But that freedom, that fear can be very reactive. I don't want my freedom taken away. No way is it going to be taken away. So this provocation energy often manifests at the shadow level as a very button pushing kind of energy. There's an inherent instinct for anybody with this gate activated to know how to find the buttons of other people. And this is mostly activated not through what they say, but the tone with which they say it. So, this traps us in kind of a cycle of the provoker and the provoked, the abuser and the victim.
Hmm.
And, it's often, it's often that emotional provocation that leads to violence. In the old days, they might have said that somebody who had a particular skill for being a button pusher, finding just exactly how to kind of get you riled up, they would have seen them as a wizard. Somebody who has that ability to provoke others so easily. It's like, wow, you have some kind of magic power. And sometimes it feels that people with this activation actually do. It's like, how is it that you know? But being trapped in the fear cycle propagates violence in the world at the shadow level. And it can also lead to a deep, deep fatigue. Um, but of course, most people who are operating at the shadow level who have this activation are not provoking on purpose. There is a deep need for love that may not be met because this points to the words of solar plexus. And so they're willing to receive negative tension is better than no attention. But when we go to the gift, this shows up as dynamism in the world. Because the underlying energy of this, think of a child under 7 who is just let to play, and that kind of our awe at how much energy they have and how they go and they go and they go and they go, and they never seem to get tired. This is the energy of the gift of dynamism, and ideally a child under 7 should only spend their time playing.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can develop the mind, their body, before then they're forced to develop their mind. So the development of genius, you see, arises through play. And that urge in children is play. The urge in adulthood, shows up as creativity and genius. So this is the spark. Dynamism initiates, it pushes, it sparks, it catalyzes. It is beyond fear, and it has the capacity to defeat those people who cannot control their anger, to stop them in their tracks. So at the gift level of frequency, dynamism provokes creativity and the will to freedom in others. It brings that out, and it becomes this thing that pushes us and encourages us and catalyzes us towards creativity and genius, and essentially at the highest level of the city, liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Liberation is about liberation at the final frontiers is about the willingness to give up creativity, which is rooted in our individuality, and in a sense let it go so even something more powerful can emerge.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to imagine what could be more powerful than that, but it's about being in service to life. And it relates to how the greater energy of life and that greater energy of liberation opens us into the awareness that, the greatest honor is to die in battle. We see that in warrior movies, martial art movies, but on the deepest level, that willingness to die in battle is really another way of saying the willingness to give your entire being into life, and to erase or transcend your own individuality in service to that. Mm-hmm. And so because this is so dynamic, there's a danger to it. At the lower levels of vibration, these can be people, that promote or unconsciously push people towards violence. Like there's a connection to violence, which we saw. But at the higher levels, it's like, well, this is dangerous to our ego. This is dangerous to all the limitations that we put in front of our journey towards our own fullest expression. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of what fascinates us about the warrior archetype is this dangerousness. Mm-hmm. At the higher level, there is no toleration for the behaviors that arise out of fear. Mm-hmm. But this is also a very important one, Kris. Maybe you want to kind of give some thoughts on this.
Well, I actually have 38 and 39, so mm-hmm. It's part of my incarnation cross. Can I see people's buttons and can I push them? Definitely. The way that mine works is through mostly teasing, like joking, teasing kind of energy. And I think that comes probably from that lightness, that gate 30 that I have as well. But I also can diffuse that energy of, wanting to fight, or that aggressive energy, if I don't allow myself to go into fear of it. So my experience in the past, especially with strong males, was to do that. But with women, I didn't. But the thing that I noticed is I did have the ability to speak truth to somebody and shift them. Um,
Mm.
and I can give you an example. I was at a uh, conference one time, and this lady came in and she was just PO'd. Like, she was swearing, she was cursing. She just got out of this cab and she wanted to register for the event, and the people weren't there, and she was so upset. And I'm just thinking to myself, you know, this lady needs to chill. So I looked at her
Mm.
and I said, look, these guys are professionals. They would be here. There's got to be a reason. Their flight's delayed, stuck in traffic, like something. So she's like pacing, 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 and still upset. And then she stayed, and she ended up being one of the people that got called up on stage. And after, she came to me and she goes, "You just changed my life by saying that to me, because I was ready to leave. I was so angry I was going to leave." So
Wow.
that I see it on that side, but I can also see it on the other side when I've been in intimate relationships and I can push buttons and get somebody really upset because they PO'd me, right? So I mean, I can see both sides of it. I can see how it's supposed to work, but also when it's out of balance. So a lot of inconsistencies with it, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And I mean, um, what our information says is that, the effect that you have can vary very much, vary depending upon where you are at in your
Mhm.
own energies.
Mhm.
And it can sneak out unconsciously too. Like, it's, a lot of these things, we're an expression of the energies that we are, whether we're
Mhm.
conscious of it or not. So sometimes these things, of course, sneak out unconsciously. But that was a really interesting reflection and a cool story.
Well, and again, when I look at this, I see the layer of the programming over top of this, and trying to discern, okay, was this something that I learned, or is it part of my design, or is it both? And then trying to, sift through that layer by layer, right? Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, what fascinates me is that having 39, what I've seen in the people that have it, and my clients who have it, is that um, that energy can operate. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's like,
Mhm.
I'm not intending to poke people's buttons,
Mhm.
or, to push people's buttons, and yet it happens. It happens anyway.
Yeah, but that's
It
part of
happens.
the design then. That's when I say it's design, when it's not intentional, and you just, you're speaking and being yourself, and you just provocate somebody. It's like the gate of shock and awe. Ren and I were talking about this actually. And I said, I'm just being myself, and I'm just speaking, and I can provoke people. And she goes, "Yeah, welcome to the club," right? She goes, "I do the
Mhm.
same thing." So it's like, you're just speaking it, but because they're expecting it to come out a certain way, like maybe somebody's expecting you to be totally, "Oh, that's so, so sorry," and you're like really heartfelt and stuff. Whereas somebody like me can go, "That's really too bad, but how can we help you shift that? Because I don't want you to stay there." Right. So that's also part of me, right? That I realize that, I can see that, yeah, you went there, but okay, let's see how we can fix that, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and then it gets taken as, you know, maybe not that sensitive, or, and then provoke something in somebody else. And yeah, it's tricky to navigate for sure.
Yes, but what an intriguing aspect of life that is.
Mhm. So we're running a little bit over today, so maybe we'll break this into three parts because we
Yeah.
only done two, and we're at almost 25 minutes here. So, is there anything you want to say about 52 and 39 as we wrap up here?
Hmm. Well, I think the wrap up is, needs to be talked with the rest of them. It's good that we're
Mhm.
not talking about the 15 today, because in a logical sense, the 15 should be last anyway.
Mhm.
So we'll probably leave it to last.
Mhm.
Um, but these rings, well, I'll just give you a teaser, I guess. Look at it this way. These are pressures, most of them, that drive our evolution. And there's so much power. There's so much power stored in us that could make available to us, lives that might be far better than what we've been living till now. And restraint is the only thing that keeps all of them in check. So, this is jumping ahead a bit, but we've got magnetism, 15. We've got dynamism. We just saw that. We've got expansion, the 53. We've got aspiration, 54, and vitality, 58. Think of how energetic and how powerful and amazing and dynamic all of those are. This is the energy that sort of fuels human life. And when we look at them all together, those words in one list, it's like, wow, these are powerful. And so this is what we're talking about that drives us and is summed up in that theme of the Ring of Seeking.
Right. So with that, we're going to wrap up, and I guess you guys will join us next week for a couple more of them. So with that, we'll say God bless. Have a wonderful day. And if you want to go into your charts or anything deeper, you know where we're at here at Clair-i-tea. With that, we'll say bye.